When I asked about the wedding date, my daughter-in-law smiled calmly. She said they married yesterday. Only special people were invited. Her words landed without apology. I felt invisible in that moment. Years of giving suddenly felt heavy. That was when my heart changed. Before we continue, stay with me. Thank you for listening so quietly. Stories like this need patience. Some family pain feels familiar. If this touches your heart, pause. You are not weak for feeling. Please like and subscribe gently. Now let me take you back. Before all of this happened, my life was quiet, not empty. Just quiet. I am 72 years old now, but for most of my life, I was simply a mother trying to do her best. My name is Clara Bennett. I raised one child, my son Daniel. His father passed away when Daniel was still young, so for many years, it was just the two of us. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I worked hard, long hours, tired evenings. I packed lunches. I helped with homework. I stayed up late worrying about the future. I wanted Daniel to have more than I did. More comfort, more safety, more chances. As he grew older, I told myself that all the sacrifices were worth it. Seeing him succeed felt like my reward. And when he met Melissa, I truly believed my prayers had been answered. She seemed polite at first, quiet, careful with her words. Daniel told me he loved her. That was enough for me. When they moved in together, life became harder for them. Rent was expensive, jobs were unstable, emergencies kept appearing, and every time something went wrong, Daniel would call me. Mom, he would say, we just need a little help. I always said yes. I paid their rent when they fell behind. I bought their furniture when their apartment was empty. I filled their refrigerator when money was tight. I told myself this was what family did. I didn't keep count. I didn't ask for receipts. I didn't expect anything in return. Love doesn't keep score, or at least, that's what I believed. When Daniel thanked me, it was usually quick. When Melissa thanked me, it was rare. Sometimes she would smile. Sometimes she would nod. Often, she would say nothing at all. I noticed it, but I ignored it. I didn't want to seem difficult. I didn't want to cause tension. As the years passed, my support became expected, normal, assumed. If I didn't send money right away, I would get messages. Mom, the rent is due. Mom, the electricity might be cut. Mom, this is urgent. The word urgent became familiar, and slowly, my own life became smaller. I stopped traveling. I delayed repairs on my house. I told myself I could wait. They needed me more. I remember one winter, when my heater broke, I wrapped myself in blankets and waited until spring to fix it. The same week, I paid for their car repair without hesitation. I didn't tell anyone, not even Daniel. I thought this was love. But love should not make you disappear. I didn't see that then. I trusted that when it truly mattered, I would be included, that I would be respected, that my place in their lives was secure. The belief stayed with me for years, until the day it shattered. I still remember the afternoon clearly. I had called Daniel just to talk. Nothing serious, just a mother checking in. I asked him casually, so, when is the wedding? There was a pause, a short one, but heavy. Then Melissa's voice came on the line. Clear, calm, cold. Oh, she said, we already got married yesterday. Yesterday. I laughed softly at first, not because it was funny, because my mind needed time to catch up. Yesterday? I asked. Yes, she replied. We only invited special people. Special people. The word stayed with me. I hung up the phone shortly after. I don't remember what excuse I gave. I just remember sitting in my chair, staring at the wall. 72 years of living, decades of giving, years of quiet support, and I was not special enough to be there. That was the moment I realized something had been wrong for a long time. This wasn't sudden. It was a pattern I had ignored. I thought about every time I had sent money without question, every time I had stayed silent to avoid conflict, every time I had chosen peace over honesty. I thought about how little space I took up in their lives and how easily I had been left out. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because I was angry, but because I was hurt deeply. Quietly, I wondered how many other decisions had been made without me, how many conversations had happened where my name never came up, how many times my kindness had been mistaken for weakness. I didn't cry loudly, I just felt tired, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix, and in that silence, something inside me began to change. I didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of the end of the life I had been living for others, and the beginning of learning how to live for myself. After I found out about the wedding, nothing exploded. There were no raised voices, no long arguments, no dramatic confrontations. There was only silence, a quiet, careful silence that felt heavier than shouting ever could. For a few days, I didn't say anything. I told myself they were busy, newly married, adjusting. I didn't want to seem demanding or hurt. I waited. Days passed. Then weeks. No call, no apology, no explanation. When Daniel finally called, his voice sounded normal. Too normal. Mom, he said, you're not upset, right? I paused before answering. I was surprised. I said carefully, I thought I would be there. There was another pause. Short, uncomfortable. Melissa's voice came through again. Calm, controlled. We didn't think it was a big deal, she said. It was small, very private, private. That word felt like a door closing. I wanted to say more. I wanted to tell them how it felt, how being left out had hurt me more than I could explain. But I didn't. I said, I understand. I didn't understand, but old habits are hard to break. After that, the requests started again, not right away. Slowly, a message about rent, a note about groceries, a quiet reminder about an unpaid bill. Nothing had changed, except something inside me had. I still helped, at first, but each time I sent money, it felt different, heavier, like I was paying to stay included, like my place in their lives depended on my usefulness. I began to notice things I had ignored before. Melissa never asked how I was feeling. Daniel never mentioned the wedding again. No one said, we're sorry. I was expected to move on quietly, and I did. On the outside, but inside, questions kept growing. Was I only valuable when I gave? Was love conditional? One afternoon, I visited their apartment. I brought groceries like I always did. Melissa took the bags without looking at me. Thanks, she said quickly. Daniel was on his phone. He barely looked up. I stood there, unsure where to sit, where I belonged. I felt like a guest in a place I had helped build. I didn't stay long. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table and cried for the first time since learning about the wedding, not loudly, just quietly, tears slipping down while I stared at the wood grain. I thought about how many meals I had skipped to help them, how many comforts I had delayed, how many times I had told myself they needed more, and I wondered when someone would decide that I mattered too. The next month, I made a small decision. I didn't send money right away. When Daniel called, I said, I need a little time. There was tension in his voice. Mom, we're counting on you. Counting. That word felt heavy. I just need to think, I said. That was when the tone changed. Messages became shorter, colder. Melissa stopped responding altogether. The warmth I thought existed was gone, and I finally understood something important. Their love had conditions, and I was starting to fail them. One evening, Daniel came over unannounced. He sat across from me, arms crossed. You're acting different, he said. I'm just slowing down, I replied. He sighed, frustrated. You know we need you. I looked at my son, really looked at him. When did I become something he needed, instead of someone he loved? I need to think about my future too, I said softly. He shook his head. You're being selfish, selfish, after everything. The words stayed with me long after he left. That night, I slept poorly. My mind replayed the conversation again and again. Was I selfish? Or was I finally setting a boundary? I didn't know yet, but I could feel the ground shifting. The silence between us was no longer passive. It was tense, watchful, and beneath it all, something darker was forming. I couldn't see it yet, but I would soon learn that when you stop giving, some people don't just walk away, they try to take. After that conversation, things did not return to normal. They shifted, not loudly, not suddenly, but in a way that made every interaction feel strained. Daniel stopped calling just to talk. Every call had a purpose now, a reason, a need attached to it. Mom, we're short this month. Mom, the rent went up. Mom, Melissa's card got declined. I noticed how my name was always followed by a problem, never a question about my health, never a pause to ask how I was doing, just urgency, pressure. I still helped sometimes. I won't pretend I didn't. Saying no felt unnatural, like trying to write with my other hand. I had spent decades saying yes, but I helped less, and they noticed. One afternoon, Melissa finally called me directly. Her voice was polite, too polite. We're just worried about you, she said. I almost laughed. Worried? I asked gently. Yes, she replied. You've been acting forgetful, changing habits suddenly. That can be a sign of decline, decline. The word hung in the air. I'm just being careful, I said. That's all. There was a pause. Well, she continued, Daniel and I talked. We think it might be best if someone helped manage your finances. My hands began to shake. Help manage? I repeated. For your own good, she said quickly. You've been under stress. You don't want to make mistakes. I understood then. This wasn't concern. It was control. I don't need help, I said. I've managed my money my whole life. Melissa sighed softly. We're just thinking ahead. After that call, I sat alone for a long time. I replayed every moment, every dollar I had given, every sacrifice I had called love. When did helping turn into obligation? When did generosity turn into entitlement? The next week, Daniel showed up again. This time, he brought papers. He placed them on my table like they were harmless. Just some forms, he said. Nothing serious. I picked them up and looked closer. They weren't harmless. They were documents about financial authority, power of attorney, guardianship language I didn't fully understand yet, but enough to feel alarmed. What is this? I asked. It's just temporary, he said quickly. Until things settle. Settle, I asked. What things? He rubbed his face. Mom, you're not thinking clearly lately. That hurt more than I expected. I am thinking clearly, I said. For the first time in a long time, he didn't like that. His voice grew firm. You're being difficult. There it was again, difficult, selfish, uncooperative. All words used when someone stops being useful. I pushed the papers back toward him. I'm not signing anything. His jaw tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, I said quietly. You are. He stood up abruptly. You don't understand what's at stake. I looked up at my son. I understand exactly what's at stake, I replied. My independence. He left without saying goodbye. After that day, things escalated. I came home once to find my drawers disturbed, papers slightly out of place. My personal files moved. Nothing was missing, but something was wrong. I felt it in my chest. I checked my locks that night. Twice, a few days later, a letter arrived from a lawyer. My hands shook as I opened it. It said Daniel and Melissa were concerned about my mental state and wanted to explore legal options to protect my assets. Assets, not me. My heart broke in a way I didn't know was possible. I had raised my son with love, with patience, with everything I had, and now he was questioning my sanity to take control of my money. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked from room to room, touching familiar things. My chair, my bookshelf, my photographs. Was this what it came to, being erased while still alive? The next morning, I called a local attorney. My voice was calm, but my hands trembled. I think my son is trying to take my money, I said, and I don't think it's because he cares. The attorney listened quietly, then she said, You're not alone. This happens more than people think. That sentence changed everything. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. What was happening had a name: exploitation. From that moment on, I began documenting everything, every message, every request, every bank transfer. I wrote dates, times, words. It felt strange, treating my own child like a stranger, but I had to protect myself. When Daniel found out I had contacted a lawyer, he called, furious. How could you do this to us? He shouted, I'm protecting myself. I replied calmly, you're tearing the family apart. I took a deep breath. No, I said, you are. I'm just refusing to disappear. There was silence on the line. Then he hung up. That was the moment I knew this was no longer about misunderstanding. It was about power, and they weren't going to let go easily. After Daniel hung up on me, the house felt different, not empty, but washed. Every sound felt louder. Every knock at the door made my heart jump. I had spent my life feeling safe in my own home. Now, for the first time, I felt like a guest in a place that was supposed to protect me. Days passed without a word from my son. Then the messages started. Short at first, cold. You need help. You're not thinking straight. This isn't like you. Each message felt like a small push, trying to move me out of my own life. Melissa sent longer ones. She wrote about stress, about aging, about how people don't always realize when they're slipping. She ended one message with, we're doing this because we love you. I stared at my phone for a long time. Love had never felt like this before. Soon, the pressure grew stronger. A social worker showed up at my door one afternoon. She was polite, professional. She said she had received concerns about my ability to live independently. I invited her in. I made tea. My hands were steady, even though my heart wasn't. She asked questions, simple ones at first. Did I know the date? Did I manage my bills? Did I cook for myself? I answered calmly, truthfully. She looked around my home, noticed the order, the cleanliness, the calendar on my wall, filled with notes and reminders. After an hour, she smiled gently. You seem quite capable, she said. I wanted to cry from relief, but I knew it wasn't over. A week later, I received official court papers. Daniel and Melissa were filing for legal guardianship. They claimed I was mentally unstable, unable to manage money, at risk of being taken advantage of. The irony almost made me laugh. The people who had taken the most from me were now claiming they were protecting me. I sat at my kitchen table with the papers spread out in front of me. My hands didn't shake this time. I felt something else instead. Resolve. I called my attorney again. She listened carefully. Then she said, this is serious, but it's not hopeless. She explained the process slowly. There would be evaluations, hearings, evidence. I would need to prove what I already knew, that I was sound of mind, that I was being exploited. The next few weeks were exhausting. Appointments filled my calendar. Doctors, psychologists, financial advisors, each one asked questions. Each one tested me. Memory tests, problem-solving tasks, simple math, complex reasoning. I answered them all. Some days I felt tired. Other days I felt angry. Not at them. The fact that I had to prove my sanity because my own child questioned it. During one evaluation, the psychologist asked me gently, how do you feel about your son? I paused. I love him, I said, but I don't trust him anymore. She nodded, like she understood. That felt important. Meanwhile, Daniel and Melissa grew bolder. They showed up at my house unannounced one evening. I didn't open the door. They knocked harder. Daniel shouted my name. You can't shut us out, he said. I stood behind the door, my heart pounding. I can, I said. And I am. They left angry. The next day, my neighbor came over. She had seen them, heard the shouting. She squeezed my hand. If you need anything, she said, I'm here. That simple kindness meant more than she knew. Other neighbors reached out too, people I had waved to for years, shared small conversations with. They had noticed changes, heard things, they offered statements. Support, I wasn't alone. In court, Daniel sat across from me. He didn't look at me, Melissa did. Her face was calm, confident. Their lawyer spoke about concern, about safety, about finances. My lawyer spoke about patterns, years of money transfers, sudden hostility when the money stopped, attempts to gain control. Then came my evaluations. The psychologist testified. She is mentally sound, he said, fully capable of managing her affairs. The judge listened carefully. When I was asked to speak, my voice was steady. I loved my son by helping him, I said. But love should not require me to disappear. The courtroom was quiet. Daniel finally looked at me then. I didn't recognize his eyes. The judge ruled that day that temporary guardianship was denied, but the case wasn't finished. There would be a final hearing. Still, it was a victory, a small one. When I walked out of the courthouse, the sun felt warmer. I breathed deeply. For the first time in months, I felt something close to hope. That night, I sat alone in my living room. I looked at old photos, Daniel as a child, smiling, trusting. I wondered where things had gone wrong, but I also knew this truth. Love does not mean surrender, and family does not mean ownership. The fight wasn't over yet, but I was no longer afraid. The final hearing was scheduled for early spring. By then, the air outside felt lighter, but inside me, everything felt heavy. I woke up that morning before the alarm. I lay still in my bed, staring at the ceiling. My heart was calm, but my body felt tired. This wasn't fear anymore. It was exhaustion, weeks of being questioned, weeks of defending myself, weeks of watching my own child describe me as someone I was not. I got dressed slowly, simple clothes, nothing dramatic, just myself. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a weak woman. I saw someone who had survived. At the courthouse, the room felt colder than before. Daniel and Melissa were already there. Daniel looked smaller somehow. Not younger, just less sure. Melissa sat straight, her expression controlled. She avoided my eyes. I sat beside my lawyer. She squeezed my hand once. That small gesture steadied me. The judge entered. Everyone stood. As the hearing began, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it. No more guessing, no more threats, only truth. Daniel's lawyer spoke first. He talked about concern, about safety, about how aging parents often don't realize their decline. I listened quietly. He painted a picture of me as confused, forgetful, easily influenced. Each word felt like a brushstroke trying to erase me. Then Melissa was called to testify. She spoke softly. She said she loved me, that she worried about my finances, that she feared I was being taken advantage of. The judge asked, by whom? She hesitated. Well, she said, by herself mostly. Bad decisions. I felt my chest tighten. My lawyer stood. She asked Melissa about the money. How much did Clara give you over the years? Melissa avoided the question. I don't know exactly. My lawyer slid documents across the table, bank records, transfers, receipts. Does this refresh your memory? She asked. The numbers were clear, thousands, then tens of thousands. Over years, Melissa's voice faltered. Yes, she said quietly. My lawyer continued. And when that money stopped, Melissa shifted in her seat. We became worried, she said. Worried, my lawyer repeated. Or angry. There was silence. Then Daniel was called. He looked nervous now. His lawyer asked him about my health, about missed calls, about changes in behavior. Daniel said I had become distant, stubborn. When my lawyer questioned him, her tone was calm. Daniel, she said, when was the last time you visited your mother without asking for money? He opened his mouth, then closed it. I don't remember, he said. She nodded. And when she stopped giving you money, what did you do? He swallowed. We tried to help by filing for guardianship. She asked. He didn't answer. She showed messages, texts where he threatened, where he accused, where he demanded. The courtroom grew quiet. Then came the expert witnesses. The psychologist testified again. She is mentally sound, he said. Her memory, reasoning, and judgment are intact. A financial advisor spoke. She manages her finances responsibly, he said. There is no evidence of recklessness. Then my lawyer stood and called me. As I walked to the stand, my legs felt steady. I raised my hand, took the oath, sat down. The judge looked at me kindly. Mrs. Bennett, he said, tell us in your own words what has been happening. I took a breath. I helped my son because I loved him, I said. I believed family meant supporting each other. I paused, but support became expectation, and expectation became demand. I told them about the wedding I wasn't invited to. The words Melissa used, special people. I told them about the money, the pressure, the papers placed in front of me. I didn't stop helping to punish them, I said. I stopped because I realized I was being used. My voice remained calm. I am not confused, I said. I am hurt. And those are not the same thing. The judge nodded. When my lawyer finished, Daniel's lawyer stood. He asked if I loved my son. Yes, I said. He asked if I wanted him to be safe. Yes. He asked if I believed he was acting out of concern. I looked at Daniel then. For a long time, I said, I wanted to believe that. The courtroom was silent. When closing arguments ended, the judge leaned back. He took a moment, then he spoke. This court recognizes a pattern of financial exploitation, he said. My heart skipped. The request for guardianship is denied. I exhaled. The evidence shows Mrs. Bennett is fully capable of managing her own affairs. Daniel stared at the floor. Melissa went still. The judge continued. Furthermore, the actions taken raise serious concerns about intent. He looked directly at them. This court will not allow control disguised as care. It was over. When the hearing ended, I felt something release inside me. Not joy, relief. Outside, the sun felt warm again. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing. Slowly, I had won. But more importantly, I had kept myself. Daniel didn't come after me. He didn't apologize. He walked away. I watched him go, and for the first time, I didn't chase after him. After the court ruling, life did not suddenly become happy. It became quiet, a different kind of quiet than before, not the heavy silence filled with fear, but a softer one that asked questions instead of making demands. I returned home that evening alone. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, closed it gently behind me. For the first time in a long while, I knew no one was coming to take anything from me. No papers, no control, no pieces of my life. I stood in my living room and simply breathed. The days that followed felt slow. I slept longer. I moved more gently. I stopped jumping at every sound. At night, I still replayed things, words said in court, memories of Daniel as a child, the look on his face when the judge ruled. I wondered if he felt regret. Then I reminded myself that his feelings were no longer my responsibility. That realization felt strange. For decades, I had measured my worth by how much I gave, how much I fixed, how much I carried. Now, I was learning how to put that weight down. Friends checked on me. Neighbors stopped by with small kindnesses. A loaf of bread, a cup of tea, a quiet conversation. They didn't ask for details. They didn't ask for anything. They just sat with me. One afternoon, my lawyer called. She told me the case was officially closed. No appeals, no more hearings. I thanked her. After the call, I sat by the window and watched the trees move in the breeze. I thought about how much energy I had spent being afraid, and how much of my life had been shaped by that fear of losing family, fear of being alone, fear of being seen as selfish. But now, the loneliness I had feared felt less painful than the manipulation I had endured. That surprised me. I began to notice small joys again: morning light on the kitchen counter, the sound of birds outside, the comfort of my favorite chair. I started taking walks, slow ones. I noticed things I hadn't before: flowers growing between cracks in the sidewalk, children laughing in the distance. The rhythm of my own breathing. It felt like meeting myself again. One day, I opened a drawer filled with old papers, receipts, bank statements, letters. I organized them carefully, not out of fear, out of clarity. I wanted to know exactly what I had, exactly what was mine. That sense of ownership felt powerful. Weeks passed, then months. Daniel didn't call. Melissa didn't send messages. The silence hurt at first. I would be lying if I said it didn't. There were nights when I reached for the phone, moments when I wanted to hear my son's voice, but I stopped myself. I asked a different question instead. Would hearing from him bring peace or reopen wounds? The answer was clear. I didn't hate my son, but I no longer needed to sacrifice myself to love him. That was a lesson I learned slowly. One afternoon, I met with a financial advisor, not because I was incapable, but because I wanted to plan. For me, we talked about my savings, my home, my future. I realized I had more options than I thought. Travel, hobbies, a smaller place, maybe. The idea of change felt exciting instead of frightening. I signed up for a painting class. I hadn't painted since I was young. My hands were shaky at first, but soon, color filled the page. It didn't matter if it was good. It was mine. I joined a book group at the local library. We talked about stories, life, aging. No one saw me as a bank account. They saw me as a person. That mattered more than I expected. Sometimes, memories still came back. The wedding I wasn't invited to. The word special. I let myself feel the sadness. I didn't rush past it. But I didn't stay there either. Healing, I learned, is not about forgetting. It's about choosing where to rest your heart. I stopped explaining myself to people who didn't ask. I stopped apologizing for boundaries. I stopped shrinking. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror again. This time, I smiled, not because I was pretending, because I felt steady. I wasn't the same woman who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was someone who had survived it and learned and grown. Life didn't give me back the family I thought I had, but it gave me something else, freedom, and that freedom felt like a quiet gift. I didn't expect to hear from Daniel again, not after the court case, not after the silence, but one evening, as the sun was setting, my phone buzzed. I was standing in the kitchen, rinsing a cup. I looked at the screen, his name. For a moment, I just stared. My heart didn't race the way it used to. My hands didn't shake. Still, something heavy settled in my chest. I didn't answer. I wiped my hands slowly. I sat down at the table. The phone buzzed again. A message this time. Mom, can we talk? Please. I closed my eyes. Not because I was angry, because I was tired. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then another message. I know I hurt you. I just need you to hear me out. I read the words carefully. They sounded familiar. I had heard versions of them many times before. In the past, those words would have pulled me back and immediately. This time, I paused. I asked myself a question I had learned to ask now. What will this cost me? Not money, emotion, peace, self-respect. I didn't respond that night. I slept on it. The next morning, I felt calm. That surprised me. After breakfast, I sent one message. We can talk. One conversation. In person. Public place. He replied quickly. Thank you, Mom. I'll come by today. I corrected him. Not my house. Coffee shop. There was a pause. Then, okay. That pause told me more than his words. We met that afternoon. I arrived early. I chose a table near the window. I ordered tea. When Daniel walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked thinner, tired. His shoulders were slumped. He spotted me and hesitated before walking over. Hi, Mom, he said quietly. Hello, Daniel, I replied. I didn't stand. I didn't hug him. I simply looked at him. He sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed. I messed up, he said. I waited. I never wanted it to go that far, he continued. I didn't think it would end up in court. I noticed something. He was talking about consequences, not about hurt. I lost control, he said. Melissa and I were under pressure. I nodded slowly, still silent. Finally, he looked at me. I know you think I used you, but that's not how it felt. I took a sip of my tea. This conversation isn't about how it felt to you, I said calmly. It's about what happened. He shifted in his seat. We were drowning, he said. Debt, bills, credit cards, loans. That was new. How much? I asked. He hesitated. Then he spoke a number. It was more than I expected. Much more. I felt my stomach tighten, not because I wanted to help, because I finally understood the scale. That's why we needed the house, he said quickly. We thought, if we could just sell it, we could reset everything. I looked at him steadily. You didn't need the house, I said. You wanted a rescue. He frowned. I'm your son, he said. Aren't parents supposed to help? I breathed. And slowly, yes, I said. When help doesn't destroy them. He looked away. We didn't mean to hurt you, he said. It just got out of hand. I leaned forward slightly. Daniel, I said, keeping my voice even. You didn't ask. You demanded. You lied. You tried to take. He opened his mouth. I raised my hand gently. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to be clear. He swallowed. Okay, he said quietly. I love you, I said. That hasn't changed. His eyes filled with tears. But my life is not a payment plan, I continued. And my love is not collateral. He wiped his face. I don't want money, he said quickly. I just want us to be okay again. I nodded. Then we need boundaries, I said. He tensed. No financial involvement, I continued. No guilt, no pressure, no emergencies that magically appear. He sighed. That sounds like punishment, he said. No, I replied. It's protection. There was silence between us. Then he spoke softly. Melissa didn't want me to come, he admitted. She said you'd manipulate me. I almost smiled. I'm not the one who tried to take your home, I said. He looked down. I don't know how to fix this, he said. I thought for a moment. Then I said, you don't fix it with me first. He looked up, confused. You fix your life, I said. Your finances, your marriage, your honesty. I leaned back. If you can do that without expecting me to save you, I continued, then maybe we can build something new. He nodded. Slowly, I understand, he said. I wasn't sure if he truly did, but I wasn't responsible for that either. We stood up. He hesitated again. Can I hug you? He asked. I thought about it. Then I nodded. We hugged briefly. It was gentle, careful, not the desperate grip of before. As he walked away, I felt something unexpected, relief, not because the problem was solved, but because I had finally spoken without fear. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the conversation over and over. I slept peacefully. In the weeks that followed, Daniel sent occasional messages, neutral ones. Updates. No requests. I replied politely, briefly. The distance felt healthy. I learned something important. Love doesn't mean access. Family doesn't mean entitlement. And forgiveness doesn't mean surrender. I had given enough. Now, I was choosing myself, and for the first time, that choice felt right. After that meeting with Daniel, my life grew quieter, not empty, just calm. The kind of calm that feels strange at first, like a room after a storm when you're not used to the silence yet. For many years, my days had been filled with worry, bills, phone calls, late-night thoughts, always wondering if they were okay, always thinking of what I could do next to help. Now, those thoughts slowly faded. I woke up in the mornings without checking my phone right away. I made my tea and sat by the window. I watched the light move across the floor, and for the first time in a long while, my chest felt light. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free. The word used to scare me. Freedom sounded selfish to me once, but I learned something important. Freedom isn't about leaving people behind. It's about no longer letting yourself be crushed under their expectations. A few months after the court case, I made a decision. I decided to sell my house, not because I had to, because I wanted to. That house held many memories, some warm, some painful. It was where I raised Daniel, where I laughed, where I cried, where strangers had once walked through my rooms, measuring my life like it was already theirs. I loved that house, but I was ready to let it go. The sale was quiet. No drama. No fighting, just papers signed and keys handed over. When I closed the door for the last time, I stood there for a moment. I placed my hand on the wall. Thank you, I whispered. Then I walked away. I moved into a smaller place. Sunny, simple, easy to clean. It felt like a fresh page. I bought new furniture, not expensive, just comfortable. I hung curtains that let the light in. I filled the kitchen with things I liked, not what anyone else wanted. I started doing things just for me. I joined a local walking group, mostly people my age. We walked slowly. We talked about small things, weather, books, grandchildren, sometimes silence. I started painting again. Nothing fancy, just colors on canvas. I didn't worry about being good at it. I just enjoyed how it felt. I took a short trip by myself, nothing far, just a few days near the water. I woke up early and watched the waves. I sat with a notebook and wrote thoughts I had kept inside for years. No one interrupted me. No one asked for anything. At night, I slept deeply, peacefully. Sometimes Daniel crossed my mind. Sometimes Melissa did too. But those thoughts no longer controlled me. They passed like clouds. Daniel sent a message once, just one line. I hope you're doing well. I replied, I am. I hope you are too. And that was enough. I didn't need more. I learned that closure doesn't always come with apologies. Sometimes it comes with acceptance, with letting go of the story you wished had happened, and choosing the one that actually did. People asked me if I was lonely. I smiled. Lonely is being surrounded by people who only value what you can give. I wasn't lonely anymore. I had friends, neighbors who checked in, people who listened, people who laughed with me. I had myself, and I trusted myself now. That trust meant everything. Looking back, I don't hate my son. I don't hate his wife. I see them clearly now. They were lost, afraid, drowning in choices they didn't know how to fix, but that does not excuse what they did. Understanding does not mean allowing harm. Love does not mean endless sacrifice. I learned that lesson late in life, but I learned it fully. I learned that kindness needs boundaries, that generosity needs limits, that saying no is not cruel. It is honest, and honesty protects the soul. Sometimes, at night, I think about other parents, mothers, fathers, people who give and give until there's nothing left. I want to tell them something. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to choose peace, even if others don't understand, even if they call you names, even if they walk away. Your worth is not measured by how much you give. It is measured by who you are. Today, my life is quiet, but it is full. I drink my tea slowly. I laugh often. I sleep well. I wake without fear. I look forward to tomorrow. And that, to me, is success. I didn't win in court just to protect my money. I won back my voice, my dignity, my life. If you're listening to this and carrying a heavy heart, I hope my story reaches you gently. I hope it reminds you that it's never too late to choose yourself, that strength can be soft, that peace is powerful, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away with love still in your heart. There are some lessons life teaches you slowly, not in one loud moment, but in quiet days that come after pain has passed. This is what I know now. I know that love should never feel like fear. If your heart tightens every time the phone rings, that is not love. If you feel nervous saying no, that is not love. If you give and still feel small, that is not love. For a long time, I confused love with responsibility. I thought being a good mother meant always fixing things, always paying, always smoothing over problems. I believed my role was to protect my child, even from the consequences of his own choices. But protection without limits becomes harm, not just to you, but to them too. I see that clearly now. I also learned that manipulation does not always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with soft voices, with guilt, with words like, after everything we've been through, or, you're all we have, or, family doesn't abandon family. Those words can sound loving, but they can be used as chains. Real love does not trap you. Real love does not threaten you with silence or blame. Real love does not require you to disappear. I learned that age does not make you weak. For a while, I believed that lie, that because I was older, I should step aside, that my opinions mattered less, that others knew better, that I should be grateful for any attention, even if it hurt. But wisdom grows with time, strength deepens, and clarity comes. When you finally stop apologizing for existing, I was not confused. I was not incapable. I was tired, and tired people are easy to control. Rest gave me my power back. Support gave me my confidence back. Truth gave me my freedom back. I learned the importance of writing things down, of keeping records, of trusting my instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. When someone pressures you to act quickly, pause. When someone tells you not to ask questions, ask more. Silence protects abusers. Light protects the vulnerable. I also learned something softer. Forgiveness does not always mean reunion. Sometimes forgiveness is simply releasing yourself from the weight of resentment. It is choosing not to carry bitterness into the rest of your life. I forgave my son in my heart, not because he asked, but because I didn't want anger to take up space in me. But forgiveness did not mean reopening the door. Boundaries stayed, distance stayed, and peace stayed too. That balance mattered. I learned that starting over does not belong only to the young. You can start again at any age, with new habits, new dreams, new friends, new mornings. Life does not end because one chapter closes. Sometimes it finally begins. I learned that dignity is quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It stands firm and walks away when needed. Dignity looks like choosing yourself without needing applause. I also learned how important community is. Neighbors who knock just to check in, friends who listen without fixing, strangers who believe you. Support doesn't always come from family, and family doesn't always mean safety. You are allowed to build your own circle, one based on respect, on kindness, on honesty. If someone listening to this feels trapped, I want to say something gently. You are not weak, you are not foolish, you are not alone. People who love deeply are often targeted because their hearts are open, but open hearts deserve protection too. You do not owe anyone your peace. You do not owe anyone your future. You do not owe anyone your silence. You owe yourself truth, care, rest. If I could speak to my younger self, I would say this. You are allowed to say no sooner. You are allowed to expect respect. You are allowed to walk away before things break you. But even though I learned these lessons later, I am grateful. Grateful that I learned them at all. Grateful that I listened when life finally asked me to choose. I chose myself, and that choice changed everything. Today, my days are gentle, my nights are calm, my heart is steady. I carry my past with wisdom, not pain, and I move forward with quiet confidence. If this story reaches even one person who needs permission to choose peace, then it has done its job. As I sit here now, telling this story, I am no longer shaking. I am no longer afraid of what comes next. Life did not become perfect, but it became peaceful, and that matters more than I ever understood before. For a long time, I believed holding on was strength. I believed enduring pain quietly made me noble. I believed sacrificing myself kept the family together. But what I learned is this. Sometimes, holding on only keeps the wound open. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is choosing to heal. I did not lose my son the day I stopped sending money. I lost him the day he chose control over compassion. That truth was painful, but it also freed me from blame I carried for years. I stopped asking what I did wrong, and I started asking what I deserved. I deserved safety. I deserved honesty. I deserved respect. In choosing peace, I chose clarity. I chose mornings without dread, evenings without anxiety, sleep without fear. I chose a life where my worth is not measured by what I give away, but by who I am. I still love my son. That love did not disappear, but love does not mean surrender. It does not mean silence. It does not mean allowing harm. Sometimes love is stepping back, allowing consequences, trusting that everyone must walk their own path. I learned to fill my days with things that nourish me, reading in the quiet, walking in the early morning light, sharing tea with people who see me, not my wallet, laughing again. Laughing felt strange at first, almost like a betrayal of the past. But joy does not erase pain. It grows beside it. If you are listening to this and carrying a similar burden, please hear me. You are allowed to protect yourself, even from family, especially from family if needed. You are allowed to say, "This hurts me." You are allowed to say, "This is not okay." And you are allowed to walk toward peace without looking back. Life is too precious to spend shrinking, too precious to spend explaining your worth, too precious to spend fixing what you did not break. I do not know what the future holds, but I know how I will meet it, with honesty, with boundaries, with kindness that includes myself, and with courage I didn't know I had. This story is not about revenge. It is not about winning. It is about waking up, about seeing clearly, about choosing dignity. When silence once felt safer, if you take one thing from my story, let it be this: your life belongs to you, not to guilt, not to fear, not to anyone who only values you for what you provide. Peace is not selfish, peace is necessary, and it is always worth choosing. Thank you for sitting with me, thank you for listening gently, and thank you for honoring your own heart by being here. Before we part, I want to thank you. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening with an open heart. Stories like this are not easy to tell, and they are not always easy to hear. So your time here truly matters. If this story touched something inside you or reminded you that you're not alone, you're welcome to gently tap the like button. It helps these quiet stories reach others who may need them. And if you'd like to hear more real, calm stories about life, family, healing, and finding peace, you're invited to subscribe to the channel. No pressure at all, just an open door. Take care of yourself, be gentle with your heart, and remember, choosing peace is always enough.